welcome everybody to Television Tuesday, and we're going to take a little bit of a break from the normal Television Tuesday. It is New Year's Eve as we are filming this, and there's just not a lot of TV on right now. There's some things to binge and work through, but we've been on a trip, and I haven't got to watch much TV, so we thought we'd do something different. This is kind of a dubbies as well, and being that it is the last day of the decade, and we both like to watch a lot of TV, we thought we would do our 10 favorite seasons of television from the decade, 2010 to 2019, and we each have a list. Now, this is not our favorite shows or favorite episodes. This is favorite seasons, individual seasons as judged by themselves as a season, so that, you know, the list might look differently if it was something else. And the way we're going to do is we'll start at 10, count down to 1. I'll ask Victoria hers, then I'll give you mine. If we have one that's together, we'll save the discussion until we get to the lower number. And as we get near the end, we'll have some honorable mentions and some other things. So this is just a general spoiler warning on anything television this decade, because I don't know what's on her list. She doesn't know what's on mine. We will try not to do major spoilers. And I'll try to put cutscenes in between us talking about a show so you can maybe move along if you don't want to see one being talked about. But we won't reveal big plot points. But, for instance, if I was talking about NCIS, the most recent season of NCIS, and I'm talking about Agent Gibbs, we obviously knew Agent Gibbs didn't die in any of the other 16 seasons. That could be considered a spoiler to some people. So just a general spoiler warning. If you don't want to know anything at all about any show that happened this decade, probably don't watch this. But it'll be relatively major spoiler free, and I hope you enjoy. So let's start with your number 10 favorite season of television for this decade.
All right, my number 10 is Money Heist season 1.
¿Cómo te suenan 2.400 millones de euros?
On Netflix.
I do not have that on my list, nor have I ever seen that show.
I've met one other person who has. So, it is a Spanish show. It's actually called La Casa de Papel. It's dubbed in English on Netflix, though, so you can watch it. It's a really good dub. And Netflix actually has it in parts, so I'm considering part 1 is season 1. There are 3 parts on Netflix right now, and there's a 4th dropping in April. So, this show centers around a character called the Professor, who's like the mastermind for a heist, and a group of bank robbers as they attempt to do a huge heist on the Royal Mint in Spain. And so it's very interesting, very character-driven. As the show goes on, you learn in flashbacks about the backstories of the robbers, but then you also learn about the people that they take hostage at the Mint. There's also a cat and mouse feel to it, because you also are on the investigator side and learning about they're trying to stop this from going on. So it's really interesting. The Professor's storyline in particular is very captivating, because as the show goes on, you're trying to determine who you want to root for and who you want to win. And it all ends in the finale where he has to choose what he's going to do when someone discovers his identity. And so it becomes very, very good. Lots of tense, gripping moments. I very much enjoyed it, and it comes back in April. So you all have time to watch it.
So this is a newer show.
It's newer, yeah. I think it came out in 2017,
okay.
And it was
and
originally
it's just
in Spain.
How many seasons have there been?
So it's 3 parts, but really the way it is the first and second part, to me, are really more like a season, because it's the same storyline, and then the third part starts a new storyline.
Okay.
So you really want to watch both of the first 2 parts to get the completion.
And
of
that's on Netflix?
Storyline. It's on Netflix now, and it's really, really enjoyable. And I've watched several shows in other languages. This one's dubbed the best of the ones that I've watched on Netflix. It's very easy to follow.
That's interesting. I thought we would likely have almost an identical list, maybe just in different order, but it appears it's not, because I've never even heard that show. All right, that's good. And so, however each other talks about the show, we didn't really script. It's just however you want to talk about it. So there you go, Money Heist. Number 10 for me is season 3 of the only network show, I believe, to make my list, and that is season 3 of Person of Interest.
There is a larger power in play now, one that we are presently ill-equipped to face.
Oh.
As my number 10 favorite season of the decade. Now, Person of Interest is a sleeper prestige sci-fi show that got onto CBS as a crime show. I think it came on after NCIS even. Anything that has Michael Emerson in it, I'm going to be interested in. Jim Caviezel's great in it. Taraji P. Henson's great in it. Amy Acker's great in it. Sarah Shahi's great in it. It has a tremendous cast. Season 3, I think, is the best season. It introduces Decima. It introduces Vigilance. It has the HR storyline. It is the final season that Taraji P. Henson is on the show. It's the show. It's the season where Fusco actually becomes a much more important character who becomes very beloved by the end of the season. The show goes 5 seasons. It is where, this is a minor spoiler, I guess, but it is the first time we see Root serving as the machine's analog, where we can see that she can hear the machine. It's where Control is introduced, and is where Samaritan was introduced. And all of those things I've said, you may not know what any of those are. They're all huge storylines that continue to the finale. And Person of Interest is a show about a machine, which it seems more relevant today than it even would have been 7 or 8 years ago when this was on, where all the camera feeds and all the microphones on all of our devices and things all over can be interpreted by an artificial intelligence and predict crime. Predict when something's going to happen. Similar to Minority Report, that movie. And it's about the crew that's using that kind of to stop crime and then all of the fallout from that. Wonderful show. Definitely worth watching. I think one of the most underrated shows of this decade is that show. It did not receive any Emmy nominations. In fact, that show only received 1 Emmy nomination its entire run, and I think that's sad. But it's hard for a network show in this era to receive an Emmy nomination. So Person of Interest Season 3 is my number 10. What is your number 9?
My number 9 is Punisher Season 1.
I do not have that on my list. I like Punisher Season 1, but it's not on my list.
Yes. I will say, just kind of as an aside, I don't love the violence in Punisher, so that's something that kind of knocks it down for me, because there's a lot of it in that show. But I love the story, and I find Frank very, very captivating, and part of it is the acting. He is so good. He's been good as Shane on Walking Dead.
John Bernthal.
Yeah, and then now in this role, and I've seen him in a couple other things too. He's so good.
John Bernthal is wonderful in Wolf of Wall Street, by the way, if you've not seen that movie. Leonardo DiCaprio. It's wonderful in that.
Yeah. And so it's part of it's his acting. The first season I really, really enjoyed, and it really kind of allowed him to go on his mission to try to take down everybody that was responsible for the death of his family. There was some really good stuff between him and Karen, who's also on Daredevil, and more on Daredevil. And I love their dynamic. I love their friendship and their relationship. And so anytime she was on season 1, it just completely captivated me. And she makes him more human and less violent. And so the scenes when they're together are very interesting, and he gets to act differently. Very likely just the scene towards the end where he and Karen are in the elevator is enough to make this one of my favorite seasons of TV, because it's such a good scene. So good.
I remember when we watched that first episode, holiday, I think, at Christmas time when it came out, Thanksgiving something, we couldn't look away because they just focused on Bernthal for like the first 40 minutes, which was very smart. Really good. My number 9 is the only show on my list not eligible for Emmy consideration. I'm always going to talk about, usually just Emmy wins. If a show didn't win an Emmy, I'll talk about its nominations. And that is from the new version, Series 5 of Doctor Who.
Hello. I'm the Doctor.
Oh.
Not eligible, of course, because airing on the BBC in the UK. I think in recent years, maybe like the last 2 seasons have been eligible for Emmys because they've listed BBC America as a co-producer, which then makes it eligible, I guess. So Series 5 is Matt Smith's first season as the Doctor. It is also Stephen Moffat's first season writing. Moffat was, I think, by a lot of Whovians, pretty beloved early on. He wrote some of the best episodes in the Davies years, and in my opinion, is one of the best storytellers that there is, even though sometimes he may get too far into some of the twists when he can't solve them. But is where we introduce Karen Gillan as Amy. It's where we get Arthur Darvill as Rory, Alex Kingston as River Song. There's lots with the Weeping Angels in this storyline. Not introduced. They were actually introduced in a David Tennant episode, I think, the season before. An episode I like very much, The Victory of the Daleks. We got the wonderful standalone episode with Van Gogh was in this season, which was such a good episode. You got the first time that James Corden was in Doctor Who, playing Craig. It's not the season that has Stormageddon, Dark Lord of All, but it is. It's got James Corden. He's a wonderful character. But then you've got the big through line of the crack in the wall with Amy and the Pandorica. And I just thought it was a wonderful, wonderful storyline. And again, minor spoiler here, but you've got probably my favorite thing in the new series of Doctor Who, the storyline of Rory waiting 2,000 years for Amy and all this stuff. I think Matt Smith's my favorite Doctor. Amy and Rory, my favorite companions. I think Karen Gillan's delightful. Matt Smith. Probably a surprise, I would bet, that I'd have Doctor Who on the list, because I haven't actually watched the last several seasons of Doctor Who. I've fallen off, but I love the Moffat-Matt Smith combination, and that's both of my shows are from early in the decade so far. So Doctor Who Series 5, and Doctor Who, it's been on for 50 years or however long it's been on, but really you can almost pick up any season and just watch it. They usually tie up their storylines in one season. There's some things that thread through, like the river stuff, but you can almost just watch an episode of Doctor Who. Much more true sci-fi. Things like Star Wars, in my opinion, aren't true sci-fi the way a show like Doctor Who is, that is just all over the place sci-fi. So, very much like Doctor Who. If you're not familiar with Doctor Who, it's about basically a time-traveling protector of the world, of the universe. Kind of what it is. All right, number 8. What is your number 8?
I do want to say something about Doctor Who, though. Like you said earlier, this is seasons, which if it were episodes, I would probably have a Doctor Who episode on there. That's the tough thing with that show, is there are some incredible episodes in a season, but then sometimes there's some filler episodes that aren't as good. But that is a really good season. When they enter in that, even though Tennant's my Doctor, who I prefer, and I Love Rose is my companion, that season's very good. The storytelling gets very, very good in that season. All right, number 8. So mine, keeping with Netflix, is Daredevil Season 3. Which he has not watched.
It.
So definitely won't spoil this, but there are minor spoilers. Kingpin arc is incredible, and that's why this made my list over season 2.
Vincent D'Onofrio,
he's incredible.
He was incredible in Law and Order: Criminal Intent, I thought. Yeah. And I am not a fan of back then I watched more procedural stuff, but he's great in that show. I think D'Onofrio is a wonderful actor.
Yeah, and he really kind of wins. But there's also some really cool stuff that they do in this season with, there's an extended fight scene with Matt, not Daredevil, but it's as Matt. And so I read about it, and the actor ended up having to do most of it because you couldn't use as many stunt people because he wasn't in his Daredevil outfit. And it's just an extended, good fight scene. There's a lot of emotion in season 3 with Foggy and with Karen and with Matt. And if anybody's watched The Defenders, kind of how that ends leading into this. This is right after The Defenders. And so there's a lot of questions about where is Matt, what's going on with him. I don't want to spoil too much, but there's just a lot of good emotion that comes out, especially in the first several episodes, to kind of keep that through line between those 3 friends and confidants. And just throughout the season, I think of all of the Netflix, Daredevil, Jessica Jones, all those Marvel shows, this season for me was the best of all of them. And I really, really enjoyed it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I got hung up after Defenders. I didn't enjoy Defenders. I didn't enjoy Iron Fist. I think I'm in the majority on that. And I just never came back to it, even though I know I'd like Punisher Season 2 and Daredevil Season, and probably Jessica Jones Season, because those are the 3 shows I like the most. I'll watch them eventually. Number 8 for me may be on your list, so tell me if it is. That would be Westworld Season 1.
Yes.
All right, so we will wait until we get to that on her list for Westworld Season 1.
Yes.
So, number 7 for you.
Well, this is exciting. I got to talk about this one because this is Orphan Black Season 1. He has not watched.
That is a big not Orphan Black is not only I haven't watched it, it's a gap. It's a known gap. I like to pride myself on watching a lot of the prestige TV, and I just haven't got to it, and I know it's wonderful.
Mm-hmm. It is. So Orphan Black is great, and light spoilers, but all of this happens in the first episode, so it's not that much of a spoiler. It's basically a show about clones, and Tatiana Maslany, in her role, she ends up playing over 40 different clones throughout the seasons of this show. Now, not all of them are main. Some of them she just has one quick scene. But 5 or 6 of them are main characters depending on the season. So you've got one actress who plays multiple roles with multiple accents, different looks, and she's incredible. At times, she even has to play one of the clones pretending to be one of the other clones, and you can tell, if you're watching, you can see the subtle differences. She did end up winning an Emmy for her portrayal in season 4. But season 1 is incredible. It just sets the stage. You're joined with the main character, Sarah, as she sees someone who looks identical to her commit suicide. And so that's kind of how it starts very early in. And she decides to take that person's life because she's kind of on the run herself. And like I said, this is the very, very first episode. And so you see her learning who she is, who these other people that look like her are. There's a lot of who can I trust, which I like that. That's the storyline that always gets me. The suspense of who can I and can't I trust, who in my life maybe already knew this secret before I did. It becomes really, really intriguing. A show that makes me want to take the quiz, which clone are you? I mean, that means I like it. And even soccer mom by the name of Allison has a story full of twists and turns that you would not believe. And so if even they can turn a soccer mom into an incredibly compelling character who ended up being one of my favorites, it's a good show.
It's a show I have to watch. It's not that many episodes either across 4.
No.
It's similar to Mr. Robot. It's probably 40
they're
12,
13 season episodes. Mm-hmm. Episode seasons, yeah.
So number 7 for me, I would, maybe on your list, I would expect you'd be surprised it's at number 7. That is Game of Thrones Season 4.
Valyrian steel.
Is that on your list?
No.
All right, not on the list. So Game of Thrones Season 4, I think, is a lot of people's favorite episode of Game of Thrones, and I think it's maybe wouldn't have been until, all the reaction of the final season of Game of Thrones. The reason Season 4 holds a special place is it is the last season that is entirely source material. Mm-hmm. That it's still been written. It's still stuff they're getting from the book. So the big events in Game of Thrones Season 4 are the Purple Wedding, are the trial of Tyrion Lannister. Mm. Oberyn steals the entire season. Pedro Pascal is just fantastic as Oberyn Martell. And if you watch other Television Tuesdays, you've seen my frustrations that they cast Pedro Pascal as the Mandalorian, and you don't get to see him act. And he is so good in Season 4 of Game of Thrones. You've got Arya and the Hound's buddy cop adventures. You've got the kind of the climax of the Jon and the Ygritte storyline with the wildlings attacking the wall. You've got Oathkeeper, the episode Oathkeeper, where Jaime gives the sword to Brienne, and you see that relationship turn, and it's the first time we see the Night King. And it's so much good in that season. It's when it really started to pick up steam critically. It's and internationally. It won 4 Emmys, but no major Emmy wins. It's all like sound design, costume design. It is an outstanding season of television, and you really can't watch Season 4 without watching all of Game of Thrones, but it's certainly one to watch. And, it's where we left off at the book. So those of us that are book readers, it's kind of the last time we got to kind of know what was coming. Excellent season of television. All right, number 6.
Number 6, I have Breaking Bad Season 4.
Oh, that's not on my list.
Wow. Okay. So it was hard. I knew Breaking Bad had to be on my list. Now, Breaking Bad's one that kind of crossed decades. The first, I think, 3 seasons were in like 8, 9, 10, and then it went in. But season 4 was in 2010, so it's kind of half. It was hard for me to choose which season because there are so many moments that I've loved that have been across multiple seasons. So I went back and forth between 4 and 5, even 6 at times. But ultimately, I chose 4 because of the Walt and Gus stuff. Because of that relationship, and it builds and it builds and it builds and it builds. And this season, you really have, for me at least, liking Walt less. He does some things that, he's never exactly a hero from the start, but eventually he gets to where it's like, okay, I don't really like you that much anymore. And that kind of started in this season more for me. And then it all culminates in the finale with a huge moment that was just shocking for me. Visually, something that all Breaking Bad fans would know, kind of, that it's like an iconic picture and an image of what happened. And so I just really enjoyed that season. There's some interesting stuff with Jesse. He's going through a lot during that season, which he is pretty much in every season. But kind of some conflict. There's some big reveals of stuff that Walt did to get Jesse back in his fold that were really, really bad.
I think technically is the second to last season because the final season was in 2 halves.
Yeah.
I think it's all considered season 5.
Yeah.
And the thing about season 4 that's interesting is it ties up. So usually in a television show, you've got the plot, like the story. Mm-hmm. What are these people doing? Mm-hmm. And in a prestige TV show, then you also have what are the relationships of all these people. This ties up a lot of the plot of the whole arc of Breaking Bad. And then the final, however many episodes, deal with the surrounding events of all the people that have been involved.
Yeah.
And so it's a very, the Gus Fring element is such a strong part of that show. Giancarlo Esposito, fabulous actor. We've seen him for like 2 seconds in The Mandalorian. They've got great actors there. They need to let them act. That's a great season. My number 6 possible on your list, Homeland Season 1.
So did I pass?
The polygraph? Yeah. Flying colors.
That is not on my list.
That is a shocking...
Well,
I'm actually shocked that through this many we only have 1 that's on both.
Yeah.
But Homeland Season 1.
So it's not on my list. It is on my honorable mention though. So I don't know. Yeah, I know.
Poor Brody.
I know.
So first of all, Claire Danes and Damian Lewis are unbelievable in Homeland altogether. Claire Danes is fabulous. Homeland's coming to an end here in a couple weeks. Mm-hmm. The final season airs. But the story of Brody is core to Homeland. And even though the arc of Brody is only several seasons long, and then you move on to other crimes and things that are investigated. If you're not familiar, Homeland is about the Department of Homeland Security. It's kind of an espionage, spy, sometimes military drama, political drama sometimes. But ultimately, it is about Claire Danes, who character is Carrie, who is bipolar. And she is like the most amazing detective. I don't know what the word is for somebody that's a detective working in the Department of Homeland Security agent.
Yeah.
When she can manage her illness. And there's a lot dealing where she can't manage her illness and things that happen. It is some of the most gripping television that came on Showtime. We've not done a very good job of telling. Westworld's HBO. We'll come back to that. Game of Thrones HBO. I think we've said a lot of your stuff.
Yeah, most of mine's
Netflix.
been Netflix. Yeah.
This was on Showtime, and it's one of the most tense season finales with the will he or won't he type thing with Brody. If you're into kind of espionage spy stuff, if you're into like the Bourne movies, this is a lot like the Bourne stuff. I'd recommend it. It won 4 Emmys, and it won the big 4 Emmys. It won Best Drama, Best Writing, Lead Actor, Lead Actress. That is the big 4 sweep that a show can win. and it's as good as it gets. If you're only going to watch one season of Homeland, that's the season I would recommend.
Yes.
Homeland's an up and down show, and I think it's almost intentional because you're up and down with Carrie as she's dealing with her disease. When she is functioning well, the show is good. When she's struggling, the show feels uneven, and I almost feel like that's intentional writing and directing to make you feel jarred, and that's from episode to episode, even just from scene to scene. So Homeland season 1, again, an early, all my shows so far, except for Westworld, which I haven't talked about yet, relatively early in the decade. So now we're getting into top 5. I'm very surprised that we only had one.
That we're having to pause for.
So number 5.
My number 5 is Game of Thrones season 6.
I have that later on my list.
Okay, so we will pause.
We will pause on that. So
your number 5.
All right, my number 5. I am confident you'll have. What? I don't know. Mr. Robot season 1.
I do have that.
Okay, so we'll also pause on that.
All right, so number 4.
Yes.
You probably don't have this one. Pretty Little Liars season 1.
I do not. I have watched it.
Yes.
But I do not have that on my list.
So this list is very much the things that we personally have enjoyed the most.
Yeah, we're calling this the best, meaning not critical, just the things
For
that
me, it was
we
the best.
liked watching personally.
Yes. I love Pretty Little Liars. It's an ABC family show, which eventually became Freeform, I think is what it's called now. About a group of friends who one of their friend had gone missing a year prior, and they're all at her memorial service because they're assuming she's dead. And they get this text message that says something about, like, I know what you've done, something. Some kind of minor threatening message, and then it's signed A. And all the friends get this message from A. And so it's just a show. They're all in high school, and it's high school drama show, basically. But what I really like about it is that it does have the mystery. There's the question of who can you trust and who can't you trust. While in the first season, we don't actually get the reveal of who the first A is, because this show spirals and there become multiple A's eventually.
It becomes a soap opera.
Yeah, it does. But the first season in particular, there are some just iconic moments that I remember. It sets everything up. It sets all the characters up. You get to meet basically the main people that are going to be important for the show in this first season. I found it very enjoyable. This is a show that I would watch live. I would actually watch it, which I don't do very much of. A lot of times I'm watching them later so I can fast forward through the commercials. But for this one, I would watch it live because I wanted to see it. I would read recaps. I would do all kinds of things. I just enjoyed it. I guess kind of like one of those guilty pleasure shows. But I enjoyed the mystery elements of it. And it was just a truly fun show for me.
The beginning, the first 2 seasons, probably Pretty Little Liars, are pretty good television.
Yeah.
There is a lot of, representative of the network it aired on.
Yeah.
Kind of teen drama stuff. But the mystery is great. It is when they decide, oops, we've solved this mystery, and they want us to keep making the show for a few more years, that it just kind of became, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
And that's common, I think, for me at least, and I think even for you to an extent, is we want one good story. It doesn't have to be 100 episodes.
Right.
It could be 8, one good story, and we're done, and that's great. Almost like a novel.
Right.
But Pretty Little Liars, I mean, it's pretty good. That was number 4 for you?
That was number 4 for me. Yeah.
All right, so we've got 2 we're waiting on. My number 4 you may have, I hope you have.
Probably not.
It's True Detective Season 1.
I contemplate the moment in the garden, the idea of allowing your own crucifixion.
No.
That is shocking! Shocking!
Well, I had Pretty Little Liars instead.
True Detective changed television in a time when television was already prestige. So, in my opinion, the first show that really changed television is The Sopranos, and of the 2000s. Now you could say Oz, and I would listen to Oz, HBO's first kind of prestige drama, but The Sopranos really did it at a mainstream level, and it created all of this type of storytelling that we're used to, and it went away from just everything being episode of the week, sitcoms or procedural crime shows or procedural hospital shows. The Sopranos did that. I would say the next most influential one before that, I think, was The X-Files, that really started to tell serialized storytelling. And so then you have Sopranos, and you have the era of the anti-hero that is most of the 2000s and the beginning of the 2010s. But then True Detective shows up, and it changes things. It is an anthology series, which means each season is not connected to the previous one. Even if they may connect it small. Like in season 3 of True Detective, they read a news article about the events of season 1.
Yeah.
There's connections. It's in the same universe, so to speak, but there's not the same characters. They're going to recast. And in True Detective, at least, it's a detective show, and each year there's new detectives. Right. And these are Hollywood A-list people. The leads in True Detective season 1 are Woody Harrelson and Matthew McConaughey. And they are unbelievable how good they are. They are unbelievable. And it's not just their performances, it is the way the story is told. It takes place across 3 different eras. It's not like time travel, it's just we're seeing these guys at 3 different stages of their life. And while the case is intriguing and you want to know who saw what happened and who did it and all that, the show is completely about what the case did to these 2 partners. And why at their older stage of life are they the way they are versus how they were when they were trying to solve the case. Matthew McConaughey is iconic as Russ Cole. One of the most iconic television characters I think there will ever be when you look back over a 50-year, 100-year period. He is so good in the show. The directing is fantastic. It has this episode with a tracking shot where they follow them through like a raid, and the camera never cuts, and it stays right on McConaughey's shoulder, and it's just cinematically, it's amazing. They only won 1 Emmy. The reason they only won 1 Emmy is they went head-to-head with Breaking Bad's final season. Both McConaughey and Woody Harrelson were nominated for lead actor, as was Bryan Cranston, who won it. And when he stood up, the first thing he said was, "Even I voted for Matthew. I can't believe I'm up here." True Detective Season 1 is a show that requires no investment. I think it's only 8 episodes. You can watch it in one day. And you don't have to know anything about it before. You don't have to keep watching it after. And it's a game-changing series of television, in my opinion. Very surprised that's not on your list.
Well, the reason that would not be on my list is just because it's kind of dark.
Oh, it's very dark.
So so as far as for me, these are things that I enjoy more so than think like, oh, that was captivating television. True Detective Season 1 is incredibly captivating. But it's not one that I enjoy as much. I like shows that do have depth to them, but that have a little more light as well. And that one is a bit of a dark. But I mean, detective stories are going to be dark because they're solving murders and things like that. That's what they are. But yes, I agree with everything you said. That's an incredible show.
Well, I'm interested now because what are we on, number 3?
We're on number 3.
And I know what 2 of yours are. So what is your number 3?
My number 3 is Mr. Robot Season 1.
Whoever's in control of the exit nodes is also in control of the traffic, which makes me the one in control.
All right, so that was my number 5. So you talk first, and then I'll talk about it.
Yes. That show, of course, it just recently ended. It's just been captivating from start to finish. I know there have been other shows with an unreliable narrator, but this one really takes the cake with that. And you know he's unreliable from the beginning because he's got drug problems and various things that he's struggling with that you see. It keeps you on the edge of your seats. The acting has been incredible. Season 1 has multiple big reveals that made you want to go back and watch the entire season again with that in mind because it was just so incredible. Rami Malek is an incredible actor throughout the entire series, but in Season 1 you really get to see the beginning of that, and he just he blows me away every time, and I thought he was incredible in Season 1, and him having to deal with everything that he deals with and the way that they frame it, it's just an incredible series, and I love that season. Yeah, it's you meet all of the characters, really except for Dom in Season 1, Tyrell and Angela, and Darlene and Mr. Robot. It's from the moment he says "hello, friend," I was there. I was there, right there, and I think the first scene of Mr. Robot could possibly be one of the best scenes of television of the decade.
where he's sitting in a coffee shop. It's the very first 5 minutes, so I'm sorry if this is spoiling. With the guy that's got like the child pornography on his computer, and he's holding him up, and he's like, "How much money do you want?" He's like, "Money doesn't mean nothing to me." And he just pulls up his hood and he walks away, or whatever the line was. Such a good thing, and it won 2 Emmys. Rami Malek, pretty shockingly, I think, won the best actor Emmy, because I think that, if I remember right, Mad Men may have still been around at that point. There were several big time the Game of Thrones actors were up. I don't remember exactly who all it was, but it was a pretty surprising moment that he won, and his Emmy speech is wonderful. We love Rami Malek. I think he's the greatest actor in the world right now. I think he's great. He just won the Oscar for The Queen. We'll just continue because my number 3 is Mr. Robot Season 4.
Because once you've weathered a storm like yours, you become the storm.
The final season, and I struggled with this because I don't want to be plagued by recency bias, and it just ended a week ago, 2 weeks ago. But just as I thought about it, I can't recall being so invested every week into this story that was being told, and like cannot wait to see what happens next. The last real memory I have of that is as a child with like season 3 of the X-Files, where in things like Game of Thrones and Walking Dead, I want to see what's happens next, but it's just Sunday and I'll wait for it to come on. Mr. Robot, I was thinking about all week long this final season from episode to episode. Did you have that on your list?
No.
Okay. And we get most of the major plot points resolved. There are a few things that just are never going to be resolved, and that's fine. But we get humongous emotional payoffs with all this time that we've spent with these characters. Carly Chaikin is fantastic. Rami, of course. B.D. Wong is fantastic. Christian Slater is fantastic. There are just some tremendous acting performances. We have an entire episode that has no dialogue, that you maybe wouldn't even realize that because it's so suspenseful. And I thought the ending was about as good as it could be, especially considering it's a pretty convoluted story about a guy with with a mental disease. It's great. Of all the things that are on our list, Mr. Robot may be one I'd recommend the most to watch, because there's nothing like it. There's no comparison point. It draws inspiration from a lot of things, but there's no real comparison point. I think I've just realized what may be the show that I don't know on yours. But Emmy nominations for Mr. Robot Season 4 have not been announced yet, so we are hopeful. Yeah. I'm really hopeful that Carly Chaikin gets nominated for a lead actress or a supporting actress. I'm not sure which category she falls into. Rami has been nominated for a Golden Globe for Best Lead Actor, but the Emmy nominations I think are still a little ways away because we just had the Emmys not long ago. The Golden Globes and Emmys have kind of split seasons because the Golden Globe Awards I think are Sunday or in the past now as you're watching this. So that's number 3. All right, what is number 2 for you?
My number 2 is Westworld Season 1.
You did fine, my friend.
I simply did what you told me to do.
Westworld Season 1.
Which
was my number 8.
Yes, okay. I love Westworld. I love that show. It has all the elements that I've liked in some of these other shows, with the suspense and the mystery. It introduces us to this future world with these human-like robots that they call hosts, basically at a theme park. And it's got incredible music. And they do some things where they have
absolutely incredible.
Yeah, where they have like the player piano playing hits, like pop hits,
like Black Hole Sun.
But on that piano, it's just wonderful.
Like an old Western style.
Yeah. It's just great. The music adds so much to that show, and you get to meet all the central characters in the season 1.
I'm just gonna list the actors in Westworld Season 1.
Yeah,
Anthony Hopkins, Jeffrey Wright, Thandie Newton, Evan Rachel Wood, Jimmy Simpson, Ed Harris, Tessa Thompson, James Marsden. Those are just some.
Mm-hmm.
That's an unbelievable... And so when I said earlier that Westworld changed television, that's one of the big things is those are movie stars.
Right.
That are in this show.
Right.
Anthony Hopkins is a Oscar movie star. Tessa Thompson's a movie star, and they're in these television shows, and that True Detective opened that door.
Yeah.
McConaughey and Woody Harrelson opened that, where now we've got things like Big Little Lies and The Morning Show and things that have got bona fide that would never be caught dead on TV 10 years ago starring in these things.
Yeah, it's not looked down upon anymore. It's great. And I love that show, especially the first season. There's lots of surprising moments in the first season that left me genuinely astonished.
Lots of games with time.
Yes.
Lots of games with space and place.
Yeah.
And
things aren't always as they appear.
Very cerebral show. Mr. Robot's a cerebral show.
Yes.
I would doubt Legion is your number one show.
Mm-hmm.
Legion is a cerebral show. Westworld's in that trifecta of you really got to pay attention, and it really makes you think, and it rewards you if you do it. And there is a world of podcasts and blogs and after shows.
Yes.
They're all enjoyable.
Right, because there's a big reveal in the last episode of season 1 that many people had already figured out. It had already been speculated about. But I kind of was fighting against it, hoping it wasn't true. But I still enjoyed it, even though I knew it pretty much was going to be, but I still was like, oh, maybe it won't be. But that, I love
the finale of season 1 is stunning.
Yeah.
And then Westworld's about to come back as well for season 3. Season 2 is also very good.
Yes.
And quite different.
Yes.
If you've seen both the Jumanji movies, that's a weird comparison to make, but it's similar to that, in that you're going, okay, how can you keep doing this?
Yeah.
And they find a way to do it just at a pivot.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, this is now new and the same at the same time. And season 3 looks like it's going to be more of the same. Westworld's a show to watch. Westworld, I think, is now taking the place as HBO's prestige drama. It was nominated for 5 Emmys. It didn't win any. That is directly because of Game of Thrones. Yeah. It's competing in the same categories.
Right. Music, we're competing against
it's the same person. Ramin Djawadi is a fantastic composer. Yeah. Also the person of interest composer we talked about earlier. So Westworld, definitely a good show. That was your number 2?
That was my number 2.
Where did you have...
Where is your...
Oh, well, my number 2, which I don't think you have,
okay,
because you've already talked about the show once, is Breaking Bad Season 5.
I liked it. I was good at it.
Yeah, see, I was going between 4 and 5, but I did choose 4.
Same. So, the hard part about me leaving out 4 is Giancarlo Esposito is not in Season 5. There is no Gus Fring.
Yeah.
His arc is resolved. And he's drives that show for a long time. But I think one of the reasons Season 5 resonated with me is I was so invested in that plot. And then he's gone and you realize, oh, I was also just as invested in Walt and Jesse and Skylar and Hank.
Yeah.
And what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Like, what's going to happen to all these people? I feel like especially the final episodes of Season 5 were a master class of storytelling. It resolves a lot, basically resolves everything. I think it has probably the most satisfying series finale ever, perhaps. I think people would vote it one of the top ones of all time. There's not a lot of questions left unanswered. The biggest problem with Season 5 is the villain problem. I don't think anybody cares that much about Uncle Jack.
Right.
But you do have Todd, who's kind of an interesting character, and then if you've seen the El Camino movie, was a lot more color set on that. But you've got the plot line with Mike and the DEA. You've got Hank finally learning the truth about everything at the mid-season point of that. You've got Jesse learning more stuff about what's happened. You've got some monumental Anna Gunn and Bryan Cranston scenes with Skylar and Walt and the baby. That it won 6 Emmys. Lead actor, supporting actress, best drama, best writing. I don't think it had a nominee in lead actress because Anna Gunn won supporting actress. So it basically swept the awards podium that of the big awards and is as good as it gets in terms of television. Breaking Bad, of course, is about a high school science teacher who gets diagnosed with an illness that he thinks will kill him in the next year, and he decides to sell meth to provide for his family. It's kind of the synopsis of Breaking Bad, and Breaking Bad is a show everyone should watch. Yeah. Everyone should watch that show if you like television. It is going to be one of the more talked about and influential shows of all time. It will be up there, even if these are not shows that I like or you like or you like. It's going to be up there on the things like Friends and Law and Order. I mean, some of these shows that are just iconic of a time. Yeah. Breaking Bad is the anti-hero iconic show. I would say even more than The Sopranos. As great, as wonderful as The Sopranos is, Sopranos was on pay cable on HBO and was hitting a smaller audience. Breaking Bad basically brought about the Netflix binge watching phenomenon. It is responsible for the binge watching phenomenon. And you could tie up Netflix subscribers and Breaking Bad's ratings as it live, and you can see as the season releases on Netflix, people would binge it, and then they'd join the live watching audience. And you can see this incredible spike as their seasons progress. And people were desperately trying to watch all of Breaking Bad before the final few episodes just to watch it and be a part of that experience live. Fantastic season of television. Yeah. All right, so before we move to our number ones, so you have some honorable mentions. First, I have a list you probably don't have. This is a list of things that I think will surprise people that know me or that have watched shows. That these 6 shows would probably, they would at least contend if I picked my 10 favorite shows of the decade, all things considered, but did not have a single season strong enough to count. And if it spoils anything on yours, try not to let it spoil. So the six shows, you might be surprised. The Walking Dead will not be my number one show. No single season of Walking Dead is good enough to make this list, but I love The Walking Dead. I love watching it live every Sunday. I watch Talking Dead. I love it. Going to Breaking Bad, we've got Better Call Saul. I think it's one of the best shows of the decade, but not one single one. The same can be said for all of these. Stranger Things, Billions, a show I love right now. Atlanta, which has been a phenomenal show. Atlanta season 1 flirted with my list, as did the other one on my list, House of Cards. Season 2 flirted with my list, where Frank kind of takes power. Both of those are close, but still, the whole of them is the best part of them. And House of Cards really faltered, obviously, with the issues of Kevin Spacey down the stretch. But none of those shows on my list, I think that might be surprising, especially Walking Dead. All right, so honorable mentions. I have 3.
I have 2.
Okay.
So one you already talked about, but I'll just put my side in, which was Homeland season 1. That was another one. Probably the only reason it didn't make my top list is because there's not a lot of light in that either. But I loved the dynamic with Brody and Carrie. Anytime they were on screen together, it was just must-watch TV. Can't look away, can't blink, can't breathe. Particularly an episode called The Weekend. There were moments in that where I could not breathe because I just didn't know what was going to happen. And it's just 2 people talking in a room, and it was incredible. And they both absolutely won the Emmy, as you mentioned, and deserved it. My other honorable mention is Gossip Girl.
Oh.
So Gossip Girl
ran
from 2007 to 2012, and most of the best parts were in that 2007. So it didn't quite make the cut. The last few seasons weren't as good as the first few seasons, but I loved that show. It's similar to Pretty Little Liars with it being like a teen drama, although it was set in New York City, and it wasn't just set there, it was filmed there. And so that adds something for me because I love New York. And so they would film in all these different locations. There's an iconic scene at the Empire State Building that I love. And so I just love all the New York stuff about it. And I like Blake Lively and Leighton Meester, the main female leads of that show, very much. And it was just an enjoyable, very similar to Pretty Little Liars in the teen drama part. Although for me, like when I was watching that show, I was, in my early 20s. What they were doing in high school was really inappropriate for high school, so it felt like it was more appropriate for a young adult to be watching it anyway. But I love that show.
My honorable mentions are kind of for different reasons. All three of these, all of their run happened in a different decade, except for one season, or in the case of one of them, 2 seasons. But 2 of these 3 shows are in my 5 favorite shows of all time. So I wanted to talk about them a little bit. The first, Friday Night Lights season 5, the finale of Friday Night Lights happens right at the beginning of the decade. Friday Night Lights is a wonderful, clean family show that has a lot of good drama and a ton of good actors. Kyle Chandler, I think, won the Emmy in that final season. Michael B. Jordan is wonderful. It's kind of another breakout role for him as an adult or older in The Wire. He's very young. And it ends beautifully. And that show's about the coach's family, and that final season was good. It would have definitely, all 3 of these, well, the first 2 would definitely have made my list. But I just decided, because it's just a tiny bit happening in the decade, that they really more belonged in the previous decade. The second of those is Lost season 6. Lost is my favorite show of all time. Its season finale was also happening at the same time as the Friday Night Lights season finale. I love Lost. I loved season 6 and all of the flash sideways and all of the emotional moments he got. And I watched Lost for the people and the emotions and the character growth, not for all of the mysteries and whodunit. So Lost is a polarizing show, but that final season would have made it. But it was in this decade. I'm not going to count it. And the other, which was in the decade before, is the X-Files season 11. It came back for 2 seasons in this decade. The first season was kind of weird. The second season was a lot better, season 11. Again, I don't really count it as a this decade show because it's from the 90s. But it is one of my favorite shows of all time. And I just wanted to show a little love to the X-Files season 11. So my number 1 has already been revealed. Yours has not.
Yes.
So we'll do mine first, and yours will be the final. So where did you have... My number 1 is Game of Thrones season 6. Where did you have that at?
I had that number 5.
Well, number 5. All right,
Yeah.
so I'll go first. So Game of Thrones season 6, not nearly as polarizing as season 7 or 8. I think there are some people that don't like season 6, but I think it's fairly loved. It's all new material. It's not out of the books. It is kind of the final season that the people that started poo-pooing on Game of Thrones liked. The thing about season 6 is season 5 of Game of Thrones is brutal. All of our friends lose. There are just really challenging things that happen in that season. And you go through it and you feel so defeated. And season 6, and similar to the way we talked about The Mandalorian, if it was happening in a different universe, we may like it more. Season 6 is a big bunch of fan service, it feels like. It is, we're going to make you feel good about yourself. So there's probably more spoiler talk in this specific thing than anything else. So if you don't want to be spoiled on Game of Thrones, don't watch this. Wait till you see the next clip. But it's where we learn that Jon Snow is not dead. That shouldn't be a spoiler to anybody. We learned the lineage of Jon Snow. It's confirmed. Huge moment for book fans. It's where Cersei blows up the steps. It's got the hold the door scene, which is, I think, maybe the most emotional moment of the decade for me. There was not... So I stream, and I stream on an Apple TV, and I was watching this on HBO Now or Go or whatever. And when you watch it on that, it doesn't like trigger a next episode. It just kind of stops at the credits. That episode ended, I just stared at the TV all the way until the TV turned off. And I don't think I moved. Like, everything powered out, timed out, as I was just staring at the events of that. The Battle of the Bastards is an amazing episode, which has probably the best, at least until season 8, the best dragon scenes, where she's destroying Slaver's Bay and she has all 3 of her dragons. But then has such a fulfilling moment with Sansa at the end of it. And then, of course, my favorite moment from the show, where Dany sets sail for Westeros and finally we're going to get that moment. And the music, which for hundreds and hundreds of episodes on my YouTube channel, I've used that music before and after every video that I love so much. 12 Emmy wins for Game of Thrones in season 6. Best drama and best writing were the two big ones. Game of Thrones struggled to win actor awards because, in my opinion, they were all these ensembles. And they were, like, I think in this season, 4 or 5 of them, of the actresses, were up against each other. And I think they cut each other's votes.
Yeah.
Peter Dinklage won a lot for Best Supporting Actor, but did not win this season. And I wonder if that was up against Breaking Bad's final season. I don't remember the timeline. I don't think so. I think that's quite different from each other. But something won Best Supporting Actor over Peter Dinklage, which was a little bit surprising there. What were your thoughts on season 6 of Game of Thrones?
A lot of the same. It had one of the shows, for me, even throughout the entire series, one of the most emotional reunions. And like we were talking about, how all the stuff that everybody had gone through in season 5, finally to have like some of the characters could breathe and could feel safe was really, really meaningful. It also brought in my favorite ship of Game of Thrones, Orphan and Brienne.
Brienne, yeah.
I love that ship.
Yeah.
I loved Arya's storyline in this season. It brought some of the best. Now Arya has a lot of really good moments, but it brought some of the best moments for me. Moments where you just want to stand up and cheer. And while there's at the last episode, of course, there's some really sad stuff with what Cersei chose to do. There were uplifting moments as well, with Dany setting sail, with some of the King of the North stuff, just with some really great moments that...
Yeah, this is where we meet
Lyanna. Yes.
Yeah, the King of the North scene, Tyrion being made the Hand of the Queen. The finale of season 6 is my favorite episode of Game of Thrones. It is, because the only quote-unquote bad thing that happens, I mean, it's just bad.
It's bad.
Cersei blows everybody up, and Tommen kills himself, and Cersei becomes the queen. That 20 minutes, you cannot look away.
Yeah.
It is a brilliant piece of music that it's scored to, and you just are wondering what's going to happen here, and it's building, and it's building, and it's building, and it's building, and then you can't believe what you just saw.
Right.
Like, no show kills people off the way Game of Thrones would kill people off. It's not just that they would make shocking deaths. They would do it in the most dynamic, incredible way, which is George Martin. I mean, that's the way he's done it. It's excellent. And influential. We talked about Walking Dead a little bit. I think Walking Dead is a very influential show in that it showed that specific genre storytelling could work. Game of Thrones obviously changed a lot of stuff too, and was such a phenomenon in a quote-unquote nerd space, and it was not considered nerd space anymore. It was, if I had to rank my favorite shows, it probably is my favorite show of the decade, but that season is just unlike any. I enjoyed it so much, and you just, each week you felt good, usually, or devastated if it was Hodor.
Yes.
So that's my number one. So what, can I try to guess?
Yes, try to guess.
I think it is going to be Stranger Things season 1.
You are correct.
Yes.
Where's your hair? You have cancer?
Did he run away? Are you in some kind of trouble? Is that blood?
It is. It's Stranger Things season 1. It was hard for me, the top couple. It was kind of hard. I bounced between Westworld and Mr. Robot. But ultimately I chose Stranger Things because I love that show. It's more light. I don't always want to be into the depths. Like some of these shows are really very deep and require... Stranger Things does not require quite the same brain power. You can look away a little bit, but I love that show. I love the mystery, and particularly season 1, when you're introduced to Eleven. Millie Bobby Brown is fantastic, and she remains that way throughout the entire show so far. But in season 1, it's just incredible. And when I was thinking about, what would be the most enjoyable show for me, I thought about, well, what do I read the most about? What am I looking for clips on? What am I trying to research? I found a video where they were shaving her hair, and you can see her become 11 as she's getting her head shaved. And I read about them showing her the clips from Mad Max from, what is her name? Furiosa?
Furiosa.
Furiosa, and how she could be tough and still be bald and all that kind of stuff. And so I love the show so much that I try to find more content about it. I've listened to podcasts about it. Of course, I'm hot for Hopper, so although not so much in season 1. It really showed all these great kind of homages to 80s things that I enjoyed as well, like E.T. It's just a fun show, and it's about friendship, and it's about geeky people that get that become cool, at least in their own way. The people that are getting made fun of, and Eleven comes and saves the day, and spoilers, but she does some really wonderful things helping her friends, and she goes from someone who didn't have much support and love to being able to have true friendships who will do anything for her. And I just love the story, and it's a story of sacrifice, and it's a story of heroic acts from a lot of different people, from people that don't maybe look like heroes, little teenage kids and then their parents.
I think I love Stranger Things. There was an interesting article in The Ringer a year ago or so that Game of Thrones is it the last piece of TV monoculture, meaning we're all doing the same thing at the same time on a day. Mm-hmm. Everybody in the final season of Game of Thrones wanted to watch Game of Thrones if you were watching it, like the Super Bowl. And will it ever be that way again? Whereas, like, when we were kids, a lot of television shows were like that.
Right.
Because if you didn't watch Friends when it came on, or Full House when it came on, or Urkel when it came on, you were never going to watch it.
Right.
Or unless you recorded on your own tape. You have to wait for it to go into syndication years later, or hope for rerun. Mm-hmm. And Stranger Things is in that same bucket, just different because it's streaming. But like when season 3 came on 4th of July, you were going to watch it across that 4 or 5 days, or you weren't going to watch it. It seemed like everybody was watching Stranger Things to try to, because you want to be a part of the conversation. Yeah. You want to be on social media talking about things. I think Stranger Things is one of the most buzzworthy things. It's just different because it only occupies that space for like 2 days, and then it's gone for a year or two. I think the reason, I wrestled with Stranger Things, and season 1 would have been the season, but I think it's because I view it as an unfinished story. I think Stranger Things is going to feel like one season of television that happens over the 4 seasons or 5 seasons. It felt more like I listed on top shows, because one single season I don't think really did it for me. I think that it's interesting in our lists what we watch television for. So I specifically watch television to challenge my mind and to make me feel, to give me emotion. And I think probably everything on my list did that. I do not watch television for mindless, or I can do other things, or I don't watch comedies very much. That world of stuff that I need, I get out of comic books, or I get out of watching things on YouTube, or I watch quite a bit of documentaries, or just things like that, or a lot of History Channel stuff, and TLC and Discovery, and lots of that stuff, which you don't watch as much of. You watch a lot more of the lighter things, the comedies. So we both like the intelligent, challenging thing, but when we don't have the mood for that, we split into the type of things we do. And the things that are in mine aren't things that are eligible for this. There was not a wonderful episode of American Pickers that I would put on this, but I watch American Pickers a lot. So we kind of diverge there, whereas you still are in the space where a show like Pretty Little Liars or Gossip Girl or something like that would make your list. I think that's interesting. So a great decade of television. As we move into the streaming era, where all these different companies have streaming services, it's going to be harder to find these things and watch them, because you're going to have to keep paying $4.99 here and $6.99 here and $9.99 there. But some of these are worth watching, even if you just subscribe for a couple months to watch them and then let it go. We'll finish briefly things we're looking forward to in the next decade, and let's just stick to things that are on. Like what shows that are currently going on do we think could make this list? I would say the way season 1 of The Morning Show went, that is a show that has a chance. Even that season I thought about.
I did too, yeah.
That the morning show has a chance to be on this list 10 years from now. I would imagine the final season of Better Call Saul is going to be a pretty remarkable season.
Yeah.
I would think Westworld will probably make a repeat appearance in the next decade as it continues. But a lot of the shows we watch have ended.
Yeah. Yeah. Most of these on our lists are not.
They're over.
They're over.
Yeah, let's see. Homeland's final season's coming up. Thrones is over. Breaking Bad's over. Mr. Robot's over. True Detective is still going on. Season 3 was really good.
That's the thing about True Detective. Any season could be on this list because it's whatever it wants to be.
So...
Yeah, I've only got a couple on here that are even still on.
I mean, most stuff is new stuff now that we're watching. I don't know if there's anything else in your mind that...
Well, and a lot
Stranger Things could continue.
Yeah, and a lot of it is that Netflix now has so many shows that I end up watching and putting on this list, but then they didn't make the final cut, that are standalone, one season, or at least that's all that's been released so far, that were really compelling. I found myself binging it all weekend long, and I loved it. But it doesn't stick with you as much in that way. Yeah. And so it wouldn't necessarily be the best show of the decade, because I can't even remember it that well, but I loved it for those 2 days. It was great. And so if TV does turn into more of that, it's going to be harder to have things that stick around with you, I think. And that give you that, because that's the difference between Stranger Things and Westworld, which were my top picks. Westworld is every week I'm thinking about it and I'm doing the things in between the episode to wait for it, whereas Stranger Things, it's dropped and the whole thing's there and I've watched it all in a day or two. And so it is different the way we consume the things that you can binge, and Netflix releases all of them, versus the things that are 1 week at a time, or the way that like Apple's doing it and Disney's doing it, where they're releasing it 1 week at a time as well.
Netflix is the only one anymore that's dropping them all together. I would say, if things I'm truly looking forward to in the next decade, I'm very interested to see how the Westworld, the Stranger Things, and the Better Call Saul stories end. Especially with Better Call Saul, how close does it get to Breaking Bad? And I'd say the new thing I'm the most excited for that I currently know about is, which should not be surprising, the Amazon Lord of the Rings television show, followed closely by the HBO, the Targaryen prequel Game of Thrones show. Those are two things I'm very much looking forward to. No date. And Amazon shows in production. The Game of Thrones show is at least a year or two away. It's not in production. But the fact that Amazon has not given a date yet, Lord of the Rings, makes me believe it's not going to debut in 2020. Yeah. They'd be promoting that. So I think that shows up in 2021. Something I'm looking forward to. So lots of good TV. Any final words for the people?
Yeah. So very much looking forward to Westworld season 3 because it has Aaron Paul, who played Jesse Pinkman on Breaking Bad.
Yes.
And so that's something that's exciting. That casting news had me literally, when we saw the trailer, lift up like this.
On the night of the Game of Thrones finale.
Yes. Brian has an image of me just like in mid-lift going, what? Because I was so excited that it was Aaron Paul and then it was Westworld. It was just exhilarating. So I'm very excited for that.
And if you liked this style, I wouldn't be opposed to us doing more of these. We could do our favorite TV shows of the decade. Be as similar to this. May have some other things. Or movies. I've thought about doing the 5 favorite podcasts of the decade because we both listen to a lot of podcasts. That list would be quite different from each other, I think. I think at the top would probably have 1 or 2 similarities, but then have some differences. Yeah. Or whatever. So hope you enjoyed it. As you're watching this, it should be a few days into New Year's, so hope you're enjoying your new year. And we will talk to you next time.